Bangladesh imploded overnight. We saw a night of violence, destruction and death yesterday, all triggered by the death of one student leader. Who was he? Why did his murder shake up Bangladesh, and what is interim leader Muhammad Yunus doing about it? We'll bring you a full report tonight. Also on the show, TikTok has struck a deal to continue operations in the United States. Europe has announced a $105 billion loan for Ukraine, yet it's being called a failure. In the US, Donald Trump has unveiled a $1 trillion defense budget. In South Korea, the president is calling hair loss a matter of survival. And in Pakistan, why are politicians obsessed with the Bollywood film Dhurandhar? All this and more coming up. The headlines first.
Russian President Vladimir Putin says he could order his forces to halt long-range missile and drone strikes on Ukraine on voting day, if Kiev holds a presidential election that Moscow and Washington are pushing for. Elections were scheduled to be held in Ukraine in 2024, but Kiev imposed martial law due to the war which began in 2022. Ukrainian law prohibits polls while martial law is in effect. Attacks at metro stations in Taiwan's capital Taipei involving smoke bombs and stabbing kills at least 2 people. The suspect is also dead after reportedly jumping off a building. The motive for the attacks is not yet clear. The Indian Parliament pushes through an overhaul of a rural employment scheme despite an opposition walkout. The Developed India Employment Guarantee and Sustenance Mission Bill will supersede a decades-old rural jobs scheme for millions of the country's poorest. It replaces the Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Act, which was a defining legacy of the previous Congress government. The Trump administration announces that it will suspend a green card lottery that allowed a man believed to be behind both a mass shooting at Brown University and the killing of an MIT professor into the US. The US Green Card Lottery grants up to 55,000 permanent resident visas annually. And Azerbaijani fuel enters Armenia for the first time since the 2 longtime rivals fought multiple wars. Yerevan hails it as a historic step in post-conflict settlement. The ex-Soviet Caucasus republics fought 2 wars over the Karabakh region before Baku regained control of the enclave in 2023, prompting the exodus of more than 100,000 ethnic Armenians.
It was a night of terror in Bangladesh. Media offices were burnt, national symbols were attacked, public property destroyed and Indian missions besieged. A night that ripped apart Muhammad Yunus's facade of a new Bangladesh. This is not a country in recovery, this is a country in chaos. First, let me tell you what happened. Last night, news of a student leader's death trickled in. His name was Osman Hadi. He was shot by masked men in Dhaka last Friday. Hadi had been airlifted to Singapore for treatment, but yesterday he succumbed to his injuries. Now, as the news broke, so did the violence. Hadi represented a radical section of Bangladesh. He was known for his anti-India rhetoric. At one point, he also propagated the idea of Greater Bangladesh, basically Bangladesh plus India's northeast. That's what he proposed. So his supporters began blaming India for the attack. They said the gunman had taken refuge across the border in India. After shooting him, they went to India. That's what they suggested. No proof, no official confirmation, just a wild allegation. But it was enough to set off violent marches in Dhaka. Until yesterday, the police had some sort of control over the situation, but at night, all hell broke loose. Mobs were prowling on the streets. Their main targets were media houses in Dhaka. 2 of them were completely ransacked and torched. The offices of Prothom and Daily Star. Those are not just buildings on fire. Those are the foundations of Bangladesh smoldering. And the mob did not stop there. They went on a rampage across the city. Their second target was Dhanmondi 32. That's the residence of Sheikh Mujibur Raham. He is the founder of Bangladesh, also the father of ousted Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. His house was torched once again by the mob. This mob is not just violent, it is revisionist. It is rewriting the core tenets of Bangladesh. Just consider what they are doing at Dhaka University. The university's main hall was called the Sheikh Mujib Hall. Overnight, radical student groups renamed it, and now they're calling it the Sharif Osman Hadi Hall. Even Bengali culture is being targeted, the biggest example being Dhaka's Chaya Knot. This is a building dedicated to Bangladesh's culture and art. It's not some Indian diplomatic mission. It's not Sheikh Hasina's former residence. It is a symbol of music and art. But this rabid mob did not even spare that. At least one lynching has been confirmed. A Hindu man was killed. His body was tied to a tree and set on fire. Imagine the level of hate and radicalism that leads to this kind of action. Some Indian diplomatic missions were also targeted. A violent march was organized in the city of Rajshahi. It is located in Bangladesh's west, close to the border with India. These so-called protesters tried to attack the Indian diplomatic mission there. Thankfully, the police blocked them. The events of yesterday and today make one thing clear. Nobody is safe in Bangladesh. Because this mob is not just targeting India or Sheikh Hasina, it is targeting Bangladeshi symbols. It is targeting their own culture and national heroes. And what is Muhammad Yunus doing about it? He's either too weak to respond or he's enjoying the chaos unfold. Yesterday night, Yunus addressed the nation. He once again blamed Sheikh Hasina and her supporters.
I
want to state clearly that Usman Hadi was an enemy of the defeated forces of fascist terror. Any attempt to silence his voice to intimidate revolutionaries will be decisively resisted. The country's march toward democracy cannot be halted through fear, terror, or bloodshed.
Hasina is living in exile in Delhi. Her party has been banned in Bangladesh. Her supporters have been jailed or lynched. Yet who is Yunus blaming for this chaos? Those same pro-Hasina forces. Who is he trying to fool here? Is Muhammad Yunus saying that Sheikh Hasina's men are burning her own father's residence? Or attacking the missions of India, which is the country that is hosting her? It makes absolutely no sense. The truth is, these are radical Islamist mobs. These are forces that Yunus himself unleashed. And now he's distancing himself from them. Because look at the interim government statement. I'm quoting, "The government urges all citizens of Bangladesh to resist all forms of mob violence committed by a few fringe elements. We strongly and unequivocally condemn all acts of violence, intimidation, arson and destruction of properties. We cannot and must not allow it to be derailed by those few who thrive on chaos and reject peace." Such a statesman-like remark. But here's the truth. Muhammad Yunus himself lifted the ban on Jamaat-e-Islami. He was the one who freed these jailed radicals. And this is the outcome. These forces do not care about democracy or peace. They care about power. The question is, what will they do next? We cannot rule out more violence, especially attacks on Indian missions and media houses. Those appear to be the soft targets right now. Plus, you have elections coming up. Bangladesh will head to polls in early February. Chances are the Islamists will try to hijack those elections, basically spread an atmosphere of fear and intimidation. That's where the role of the security forces will be key. Will Muhammad Yunus deploy them to crack down, or will he watch the country burn? Either way, we haven't seen the end of the story yet. If you thought July 2024 was bad, the next chapter could be worse. The TikTok deal has finally happened. TikTok will remain in the United States. Its parent company, ByteDance, has signed an agreement brokered by US President Donald Trump himself. And Trump will call this a win. His team will project it as a breakthrough. They will showcase it as a victory of the US President, the deal maker. But when you dig through the specifics, it doesn't really look like a win. And I'll explain why I say this. Who owns TikTok in America now after this deal? Who owns TikTok in the US? A new company, a joint venture. It is called the TikTok USDS Joint Venture LLC. USDS stands for US Data Security. This entity will run TikTok's operations in the United States. And who are the shareholders? ByteDance, the Chinese parent of TikTok. ByteDance will hold a 19.9% stake. That's nearly 1/5 of the company. Then we have the existing investors of ByteDance, those who already have a share in the company. They will hold 30.1% of the new entity. Now, if you put this together, ByteDance and its investors, if you put their share together around 50% of the shares are held by the original backers of TikTok. What about the other half, the remaining 50%? It will be owned by a consortium of investors. This includes tech company Oracle, private equity firm Silver Lake, and Emirati-backed investment firm MGX. These are the new investors. They have the blessings of Donald Trump. And the biggest name here is Oracle, of course. It is owned by Larry Ellison, who's a key ally of Donald Trump. Oracle has been named TikTok's quote-unquote trusted technology partner. Reports say they will help in managing the data. So far, this sounds like a win for the United States. And on paper, it looks like TikTok will follow American rules in the US, and American ownership will make it easy to get TikTok to fall in line. But that is only half the story. ByteDance still owns the global product. They control advertising, e-commerce, and global monetization. Most importantly, they still hold the algorithm. And that is the secret sauce. The recommendation engine, the code that decides what you see and how you keep scrolling. 5 years ago, Beijing made sure that companies like ByteDance are able to control their algorithms. In 2020, China changed its export laws, and this gave the Chinese state new powers. Beijing can approve or block the sale of key technologies, including tech like TikTok's algorithm. And that is why there is little clarity. No one knows how TikTok's recommendation engine will work in the US. Will the algo work out of the United States? Has it been licensed to a new company? That part still remains unclear. Now, some reports say that Oracle may be monitoring the code, but not running it. That means Beijing could potentially make TikTok's tech bend to its will. And that's exactly what Trump wanted to avoid. For the longest time, he pushed for and promised a full American takeover. He said TikTok should be owned by American firms.
Well, it's very necessary. You know, in the past, we were able to go to other countries, buy whatever we want. But all of a sudden, if those countries are hostile, and by the way, China hasn't been. We've made deals with China. You know, they approved the TikTok deal. Everyone said you'd never get the TikTok deal approved. They approved it, and we have great people buying it. Big, strong American companies are buying it.
On one occasion, Trump even said, and I'm quoting, "If I could, I'd make it 100% MAGA." Well, it's not 100%, but Trump's closest allies have a slice of the deal. TikTok was once a security threat, as they put it. Now it has become a platform backed by Trump's friends. His critics are slamming the deal. Democratic Senator Elizabeth Warren has called the deal murky. She says Americans need clarity. Who runs the app? Who controls the tech? And who profits from the data? They want answers to all these questions. But for the moment, this is what we have. TikTok is here to stay in the United States. We just don't know who holds the remote now. Let's turn to Europe now, which has announced a massive loan to fund Ukraine. We are not talking a few $1 billion. This is a bumper loan, $105 billion of interest-free money. It will fund Ukraine's war for the next 2 years. Now, I know this sounds impressive. After all, $105 billion is a lot of money. But in some parts of Europe, it's been seen as a failure. Why? Because this was not the initial plan. The initial plan was to use frozen Russian assets to raise money. But Europe, being Europe, could not agree to it. There were too many divisions, too much opposition, so the European Union finally switched to Plan B. It's still being billed as a big breakthrough, though.
So we gathered with a clear objective to address Ukraine's pressing financing needs for the next 2 years. And I'm very pleased to say we made it. We have secured an agreement that we can deliver on the financing needs for Ukraine for the next 2 years.
All European leaders were in Brussels yesterday. Their talks were long and intense. They lasted well into Thursday night. And yet, Plan A was not a success. Let me explain why. Plan A was to use frozen Russian assets. Now, Moscow has around $247 billion in Europe. When the war broke out, Europe froze those assets. So Russia cannot access its own money. The initial plan had 4 steps. Step 1, Europe would borrow the frozen Russian money. Step 2, this money would be given as a loan to Ukraine. Step 3, Ukraine would repay this loan if Russia compensated it after the war. And step 4, the funds will then be returned to Russia. This was Europe's elaborate plan. But this plan had several problems. First of all, it's legally dubious. The move could easily trigger cases and retaliation. This especially worried Belgium. That's where 88% of the Russian funds are stored, in Belgium. And they were not okay with using frozen Russian assets. Secondly, it would shake confidence in Europe. Just think about it. If the Europeans can take Russian assets, they can take anyone's assets. Tomorrow the EU may have a problem with India or with China or with South Africa. Will they seize those assets as well? All these worries forced Europe to abandon the initial plan. Instead, they're raising money themselves, basically selling securities in the capital market. And even this plan has its opponents. Hungary, for instance, is calling it lost money.
Hungary is totally out of that. I think it's a bad decision. All the others, except the Czechs and Slovaks, think that it was a good decision. I think it was an extremely bad decision, which bring Europe closer to the war. And it looks like a loan, but of course the Ukrainians will never be able to pay it back. So it's basically lost money.
For Ukraine, this is a huge lifeline. The United States has reduced its military aid for Kiev. President Zelensky was predicting a shortfall next year, a shortfall of around $50 billion.
What is the threat? Well, there will definitely be a deficit of 45 to 50 billion. Exactly. The deficit could be more. We don't know exactly how events will develop next year. We are doing everything to end the war in the near future.
This loan will end the cash crunch, but it won't end the war. And that's where the peace talks come in. Russian officials will travel to the United States on Saturday. They will meet President Trump's 2 main negotiators. One is his special envoy, Steve Witkoff, and the other is his son-in-law, Jared Kushner. They will present Ukraine's new peace plan to Russia, a plan that includes U.S. guarantees for Kiev. President Trump is hopeful of a breakthrough. He says a deal is close.
Well, they're getting close to something, but I hope Ukraine moves quickly. I hope Ukraine moves quickly because Russia's there. And, every time they take too much time, then Russia changes their mind.
Even in Europe, there are signs of change. It's being led by French President Emmanuel Macron. He is asking Europe to reach out to Putin.
I think it will once again become useful to talk to Vladimir Putin. Yes, I see that there are people who talk to Vladimir Putin, so I think that we, Europeans and Ukrainians, have an interest in finding the right framework to re-engage in this discussion in a proper manner.
Macron did speak to Putin in July. But why does he want to speak again? Well, there could be two reasons. One, realism is setting in. Even Zelensky has diluted his demands in recent months. He's given up his NATO bid. He's willing to discuss territory. So it is pragmatic for Europe to do the same. There is no point in being rigid. Secondly, Europe wants a seat at the table. Right now, they're being cut out from the peace process. The United States is talking to Ukraine. The United States is also talking to Russia. There is no Europe in the picture. Maybe that is why Macron wants to reach out, to get a seat at the table. Either way, it's not a bad idea. Europe's decision to not touch Russian assets is a good sign. But their $105 billion loan? Well, that shows an internal battle unfolding in Brussels between supporting Ukraine and pushing for peace.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Let's first get a sense of why this is happening. Where is Bangladesh going? Is it now very much of Islamist extremism? Is there no coming back? What are the implications for India? And I'm going to open this with a very honest and frank question with A.K. Abdul Momen, former Foreign Affairs Minister of Bangladesh, who lives today in exile in the United States because he fears for his life. His home had been targeted. We also have with us Kanchan Gupta, Senior Advisor of the INB Ministry, somebody who knows Bangladesh very well. Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow, ORF, needs no introduction, viewers, preeminent foreign security and geopolitical analyst here. Salahuddin Shoaib Chaudhry, Bangladeshi journalist, who is surprisingly bold and outspoken. And I will bring in our Indian guests, Syed Fazal Kashani and Atikur Rahman, in just a few moments. But let's first understand what's going on in Bangladesh. And I want to begin with you, Mr. Momin. Thank you very much. This mob fury, this frenzy of bigotry, Mr. Momin, what do you put this down to?
This is very saddening and very disappointing. And I feel this mob culture, which had been promoting for the last 15 months, is leading the country to a dangerous situation. And I'm afraid that Professor Yunus would be termed as the promoter of mob culture in Bangladesh. And mob culture is not acceptable in Bangladesh at all, because it will destroy the nation itself and also the peace and stability within the region.
The genesis.
So this must stop. Mob culture must stop.
So Salahuddin Shoaib Chaudhry, I'm going to bring you in now. I want to ask you, sir, this mob culture, is it just disaffected dissidents, or is there actually a Islamic undertone to all of this? What to make of it?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to tell the truth, since the senior leader of Awami League is also here. This all eyes of Gaza, this culture, it was nurtured and promoted even by Sheikh Hasina. They were shouting for Gaza. They were embracing jihadists like Hifazat-e-Islam. And now the jihadis are on the street, destroying Bangladesh and becoming the monsters which are also trying to eliminate Awami League. What is happening in Bangladesh is the result of the decades of patronizing political Islam, appeasing political Islam, and, as you said, harboring the Gaza madness. And in today's Bangladesh, what is happening, when I'm talking to you, just 2 hours before, they set fire to Udichi Shilpigosti's office also. Last night, they burnt down Chayanot. 2 hours ago, they burnt down Udichi Shilpigosti. Yunus is playing the role of the arsonist and firefighter. Because this is a direct attack. What you have mentioned about Tipu Chandra Das, the 13-year-old Hindu youth, nowhere is mentioned about his this very brutal incident. No one is talking. Why? Because he is a Hindu, and they are Muslim press. I must tell the truth. And let a Hindu die or let 1 million Hindus die, no problem. But one Muslim man dies, there are thousands of hundreds of thousands will come to the streets and continue rampage. This is the result of our political leaders promoting and harboring the culture and political Islam. And they are facing, they have created the Frankenstein, and now the Frankenstein is hitting them. But of course, this is an attack on the Bengali identity. Because very Bengali identity, the deep value, core value of Bengali identity is secularism.
Okay.
So now our Bengali identity is under attack, and we don't count on any political leader. They are not going to do anything. They have shown their activities. We will defend our own country. Bangladesh belongs to the 180 million Bengalis.
Okay, so let me open this up.
Our next story takes us to the United States. Washington has just approved a massive defense budget. It is close to $1 trillion. This is the biggest military budget in American history, or in the world for that matter. It locks in President Donald Trump's priorities, like more money for weapons and the U.S. military at home. But the American Congress has also drawn red lines. There are limits to what the president can do. Plus, Europe is guaranteed the support of U.S. troops. Ukraine will get $800 million in weapons aid. China will face new scrutiny on tech investments. Taiwan will get $1 billion for military cooperation. Israel's missile defense systems will get full funding. And Trump's military operations near Venezuela are under scrutiny. So this is not just a budget. It's a blueprint for U.S. power in the year ahead. Here's a report.
US President Donald Trump has signed a defense law that will shape America's power for the next year. It is the single most important military decision Washington makes annually. This is called the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA. This year, it comes with a record price tag: $901 billion. More than any defense bill before it, and more than what the White House itself requested. Congress passed it with overwhelming support. At home, it focuses on the military itself. U.S. service members will receive a nearly 4% pay rise. The Pentagon will move ahead with new ships, aircraft, and missile systems. Funding for the Trump's Golden Dome missile defense project is also written into law. The bill reflects the political priorities of President Trump. Diversity and inclusion programs at the Pentagon have been shut down, and transgender women are barred from women's sports at military academies. Beyond America's borders, the bill sends even stronger signals. Europe sits at the center of it. Despite Trump's skepticism of NATO, Congress has drawn clear limits. U.S. troop numbers in Europe cannot fall below 76,000. Major equipment cannot be pulled out quickly. Support for NATO's eastern flank is reinforced. Special focus has gone to the Baltic states. Ukraine is also locked in. The Congress has approved $400 million a year for 2 years. The money will fund weapons production through U.S. companies. It guarantees continued military support. Even as political debates continue elsewhere, the next major focus of the bill is on China. Washington is tightening scrutiny of American money flowing into sensitive Chinese technologies. US companies must now notify the Treasury Department when investing in high-risk sectors. These include semiconductors and quantum systems. Federal financing for some Chinese biotech firms is restricted. US diplomats will also expand monitoring of Beijing's global influence. That attention does not stop at China's borders. The bill fully funds the Taiwan Security Cooperation Initiative, worth $1 billion. It authorizes continued US military training for Taiwanese forces. Meanwhile, limits have been placed on reducing US troop levels in South Korea. In West Asia, there's a symbolic break with the past. It repeals the legal authorizations behind the Iraq wars. Those powers had been in place for decades. Congress is reclaiming its role in decisions of war. The law also lifts sanctions imposed on Syria in 2019. The stated aim is to support post-war reconstruction. The bill provides full funding for Israel's missile defense systems. That includes Iron Dome and David's Sling. In America's neighborhood, active duty troops have been authorized at the US-Mexico border. And congressional oversight of recent military operations in the Caribbean has also been tightened. So what does this all add up to? This defense law locks in America's military priorities for the year ahead. Congress has drawn red lines that Trump cannot cross. The message to allies is clear. US commitments will hold. And to rivals, Washington is watching them closer than ever before.
Studying abroad used to be a dream, but now it's a calculated decision. If you're a student who wanted to study abroad, 2025 may have been a bit of a nightmare for you, because this year immigration emerged as one of the biggest stories. Not just in the US, where Donald Trump has weaponized visas, but also in the UK, Canada and Australia. These countries have been the biggest student destinations abroad, and this year they began shutting doors. They issued fewer visas, increased the scrutiny of applicants and imposed stricter controls, and also made a clear preference for rich and highly skilled talent. So the students began recalibrating. Their enrollments went down. In fact, fresh data is out. This is from India's Ministry of External Affairs. It was tabled during the winter session of Parliament, and this is what it shows. Currently, more than 1.8 million Indian students are studying overseas. This is across 153 countries. Out of these, 1.2 million are enrolled in universities or higher education courses. 1.2 million. Now, this number is lower than last year. Last year, in 2024, over 1.3 million students were enrolled. That means university-level enrollments have dropped. Fewer Indian students are heading out. And what is driving this decline? Well, one of the major reasons, of course, is visa rejections. And we'll start with the United States here. The US issues an F1 visa for students. This year, Indian students received fewer F1 visas. They were down by more than 43% in the first half of 2025. And that's a big fall, 43%. India has been the top recipient of F1 visas since 2021, but this year has changed that. The US government is tightening immigration rules. There are more checks. Visa appointments are being cancelled. Even social media profiles of applicants are being scrutinized. And a similar story is playing out in Canada. In 2023, Indian students received nearly 150,000 study permits. In 2024, that number dropped to around 76,000. And this year, the fall was even sharper. This is for Canada. Less than 10,000 permits were issued in 2025. And this is between the months of January and August. That's a drop of more than 90% in 2 years. Canada is cutting back on student and worker visas. So is the United States of America. And these were the go-to choices for Indian students. With these numbers shrinking, Where are Indian students going now? Well, they're exploring newer destinations. For instance, Europe is emerging as a new study abroad destination, starting with Germany. Some 60,000 Indian students are enrolled in Germany right now. That's a 20% jump from the year before. And what is Germany offering? Why are students choosing Germany over other countries? Because this country is investing in education. Germany is offering more student-friendly policies. Similarly, France is also stepping up. Since 2024, Indian student enrollments have risen in France. They've gone up by 17%. So yes, Indian students are exploring new options, and most of them are studying STEM subjects. STEM, as you would know, stands for Science, Technology, Engineering and Mathematics, STEM. These fields dominate the enrollments. Nearly 70% of Indians studying abroad are enrolled in STEM courses. Why is that? Because these fields offer more jobs. They remain high in demand. Beyond a good education, the students also want more from their experience in these courses. They want more than a good degree. They want affordability. They want post-study work opportunities. Better job prospects, basically. These priorities reflect in university choices. Students are looking for policy stability. They do not want sudden changes or shifting visa policies. Basically, they want value for their money. And that should not be surprising because studying abroad is quite expensive. Indian students are taking on more debt than ever before. 1 in every 3 students now takes a loan to study abroad. The cost of education has become a big concern. And in 2026, this will continue to be a key factor. In 2024, Indian families spent $44 billion, $44 billion, to educate their children abroad. By 2030, that number is expected to double. It could reach $91 billion. So countries tightening student visas stand to lose. They stand to lose this money. At the same time, new destinations can step in and capitalize. European nations are opening up, and they will compete for a bigger slice of that spending. So what's the outlook for the year ahead? Let's sum it up for you. Destinations like the US and Canada are getting stricter. Europe is becoming more attractive, but affordability remains critical and the students want stability. So going forward, countries that offer clarity and consistency will win. It's December. Christmas lights are up. European leaders were inside a warm summit hall in Brussels talking about trade and diplomacy. But outside? Outside there were lines of tractors, fireworks, burning tires, potatoes flying through the air, and farmers in gas masks staring down at the riot police. All of this over a trade deal that took 25 years to negotiate. So what exactly happened between the European Union and its farmers? Why did Europe's biggest trade deal suddenly get scrapped? At least for now. Our next report breaks it down.
What started as a protest turned into chaos. Thousands of farmers from across Europe drove nearly 1,000 tractors into Brussels. They blocked roads. They toppled barriers. They set off fireworks. They burned tires. They threw potatoes and eggs at the police. EU Parliament staff were told to stay away from the windows. Tear gas filled the streets. It looked less like a policy disagreement and more like a revolt. Some tractors even had Christmas lights and music blaring. But the message was loud and clear: no Mercosur. For over 2 decades, the European Union has been negotiating a massive free trade agreement with Mercosur. This is a South American bloc that includes Brazil, Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, and now Bolivia. If signed, it would create the largest free trade zone on the planet. Think about the scale: 450 million consumers in Europe, 270 million consumers in South America. The pitch from Brussels was simple: Europe sells more cars, machinery, wine, spirits, and industrial goods. South America gets easier access to the EU market for beef, poultry, sugar, rice, soybeans, and honey. On paper, it's a win-win. In reality, it's a political minefield. European farmers saw the Mercosur deal as an existential threat. Their fear was cheap imports, Brazilian beef, South American poultry, sugar and soy grown under less stringent environmental rules, lower labor costs, and fewer regulations. For them, this wasn't about competition. It was about being undercut, legally. And there's already pressure. Rising costs, falling incomes, and complex EU bureaucracy. So for the farmers, this was the final straw.
We are extremely sad to see what is happening. We believe that we mainly respect property and people, and today we are here because our role is to feed the population, and yet we are being tear-gassed, handled, and not respected. We need to wake up quickly because otherwise French agriculture and even European agriculture will die. And as we say, there is no future without farmers.
Inside the EU summit hall, politics kicked in. France and Italy, two heavyweight members, made it clear. They were not ready to sign.
I want to say here to our farmers who are demonstrating that France's position has been clear from the start. On Mercosur, we believe the terms aren't acceptable and that this agreement cannot be signed.
Italy's Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni warned against rushing the deal. Together with countries like Poland and Hungary, they had enough influence to stall the agreement. The result? Ursula von der Leyen had to cancel her Brazil trip. The deal was postponed to January. So is the deal dead? Not yet. Supporters like Germany, Spain, the Nordic countries are still lobbying hard. Brazil's President Lula has agreed to wait, but not forever.
If it's not going to be possible to sign now because it won't be ready, there's nothing I can do either. Let's wait until tomorrow. Hope dies last.
The EU Commission insists it's confident a deal can be approved in January. For now, the tractors have rolled out of Brussels. The tear gas has cleared, and the deal is back in limbo. But the anger? That's still very much alive. And come January, Europe will have to decide whether it wants a historic trade deal or a full-blown farm revolt.
In South Korea, politics has entered the bathroom mirror. A personal worry is now a public debate. The question is quite simple. Should the state pay for hair loss treatment? President Lee Jae-myung thinks it should be discussed at least. He says baldness is no longer just cosmetic. It is quote-unquote a matter of survival for young people. And those words have struck a nerve. They have sparked a national debate about beauty standards, mental health, and what public health care is really meant to cover. Supporters say the system must adapt to social pressure. Critics say limited funds should go to life-threatening diseases, not hair loss. So what really is at stake here? Our next report explores.
In South Korea, a familiar personal worry has suddenly become a political debate: hair loss, and whether the state should help pay to treat it. The debate was triggered this week by President Lee Jae-myung. During a live-streamed policy briefing, Lee asked officials to review whether hereditary hair loss should be covered by national health insurance. He said hair loss was no longer just cosmetic and called it a matter of survival for many young people. South Korea's health insurance already covers hair loss caused by medical conditions, but it excludes age-related or hereditary baldness. The government says those cases are not life-threatening. Lee questioned that definition. He asked whether hereditary conditions should still be excluded simply because they are not fatal. The remarks struck a nerve. South Korea has strict beauty standards, and baldness carries heavy stigma. A 2024 survey found 98% of young adults believe attractive people receive social advantages. Government data shows 240,000 people visited hospitals for hair loss last year. About 40% of them were in their 20s and 30s. Many say the condition affects their confidence. Some say it affects job interviews and dating. Many have reportedly welcomed the president's comments. A 6-month supply of hair loss medication can cost about 200,000 won. That is roughly $135. Others were skeptical. Some said the cost was manageable, and they questioned whether public money should be used for it. Doctors and medical groups were more critical. The Korean Medical Association said insurance funds should prioritize cancer and other serious diseases. They warned resources are limited. And the health system is already under strain. South Korea's national health insurance is projected to run into deficit by 2026. Critics also point to the scale. Some experts estimate up to 10 million people experience hair loss. Covering treatment broadly could sharply raise costs. Given the scale of potential demand, the question of funding becomes even more pressing. The debate is not new. President Lee raised the same idea during his 2022 election campaign. Back then, critics accused him of vote grabbing. The proposal was later dropped. This time, Lee says young people feel excluded from insurance benefits they help fund. He has suggested limits on coverage to control costs. Health officials say the issue is under review. No policy change has been approved. For now, Lee's remarks have widened the debate. Should public insurance cover only life-threatening diseases, or also conditions that affect daily life and mental health?
For our next story, let me ask you something. Have you ever disliked a movie so much that you banned it? Then you talked about it every day, played its songs at events, and planned an entire counter movie as a reply? No? Well then, congratulations, you're not Pakistan. The film at the center of the story is called Dhurandhar. It's a Bollywood movie. It released over 2 weeks ago. The movie shows the story of an Indian spy in Pakistan. There's a lot of action and gang wars. Don't worry, we won't give you any spoilers. But since its release, Dhurandhar has taken the box office by storm. I'm sure you've heard about it if not seen the film. And there's a lot of chatter. Some people love it, some people don't love it. There are debates on social media. We are not getting into that tonight because tonight we want to talk about Pakistan's obsession with Dhurandhar. Now, the movie is set in Karachi's Liari. It is one of the city's oldest living neighborhoods. For decades, Liari was a working-class mosaic. Sindhi fishermen, Baloch nomads and many other communities living together. In the 1960s, the first criminal gangs appeared. By 1980, the situation worsened. Just across the border, the Soviet-Afghan war was raging. Guns flowed through the Afghanistan border into Liari. Street power turned into firepower. Violence became a daily reality, and these gangsters found friends in high places. Because politicians needed votes and gangs controlled the streets. So an unholy alliance was born. In 2014, Karachi was ranked the 6th most dangerous city in the world. Now, this movie, Dhurandhar, talks about Karachi's gang violence, among other things. Of course, Pakistan did not like the depiction, and that's perfectly okay. Art is subjective by all means. But they went a step further and they banned it. And that move backfired. Because once you ban something, interest spikes. So illegal downloads surged in Pakistan. Reports say Dhurandhar racked up nearly 2 million illegal downloads in a matter of days. That makes it the most pirated Indian film in Pakistan. And if that wasn't enough, Pakistani politicians are now humming along. The film uses a song by a rapper named Flipperachi. The song has since gone viral. You might have heard it on Instagram. And guess where it turned up? At a public event with Bilawal Bhutto in the room. The former foreign minister of Pakistan made an entry with a song from a banned Indian film. At this point, the joke writes itself. Because here's the twist. Bilawal's own party, the PPP, has filed a case against Dhurandhar. PPP is the Pakistan People's Party. They're suing the film. They're suing the film Dhurandhar. Why? For using Benazir Bhutto's images and footage from old party rallies. So on one hand, they file a court case. On the other, the party sign uses it as grand entry music. I guess Pakistan can ban the movie, but they cannot ban the vibe. And that's not all. Dhurandhar clearly touched a nerve for them. Because, believe it or not, Pakistan is planning a counter movie. It was announced by the Sindh government, no less. The movie will be called Meri Liari, which means my Liari. The pitch is quite simple. Pakistan wants to show what they call the real Liari. Well, good luck to them. You can make movies, but you cannot change history. Also, let's just pause here for 1 second and look at Pakistan. This is a country that is grappling with a fragile economy, inflation crushing households, IMF bailout number 26, a former prime minister in jail, border clashes with the Taliban, an army chief quietly consolidating power, and general instability everywhere. For any reasonable nation, this movie should be somewhere near priority number 97. But not Pakistan. They've always had an unhealthy obsession with India. It is just extending to our movies now. They banned a film from their theatres and now it is living rent-free in their minds. At this point, it is more popular than the country's supreme commander himself. So here's what Pakistan should do next. Deny the movie a visa, debate it on primetime TV and blame it for inflation. For the rest of the world, it's a masterclass on what not to do with a movie.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Let's first get a sense of why this is happening. Where is Bangladesh going? Is it now very much in the clutches of Islamist extremism? Is there no coming back? What are the implications for India? And I'm going to open this with a very honest and frank question with A.K. Abdul Momen, former Foreign Affairs Minister of Bangladesh, who lives today in exile in the United States because he fears for his life. His home had been targeted. We also have with us Kanchan Gupta, Senior Advisor of the INB Ministry, somebody who knows Bangladesh very well. Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow, ORF, needs no introduction, viewers, preeminent foreign security and geopolitical analyst here. Salahuddin Shoaib Chaudhry, Bangladeshi journalist, who is surprisingly bold and outspoken. And I will bring in our Indian guests, Syed Fazal Kashani and Atikur Rahman, in just a few moments. But let's first understand what is going on in Bangladesh. And I want to begin with you, Mr. Momin. Thank you very much. This mob fury, this frenzy of bigotry, Mr. Momin, what do you put this down to?
This is very saddening and very disappointing. And I feel this mob culture, which had been promoting for the last 15 months, is leading the country to a dangerous situation. And I'm afraid that Professor Yunus would be termed as the promoter of mob culture in Bangladesh. And mob culture is not acceptable in Bangladesh at all, because it will destroy the nation itself and also the peace and stability within the region.
The
So
genesis.
this must stop. Mob culture must stop.
So, Salahuddin Shoaib Chaudhry, I'm going to bring you in now. I want to ask you, sir, this mob culture, is it just disaffected dissidents? Or is there actually a Islamic undertone to all of this? What to make of it?
Thank you very much. First of all, I would like to tell the truth. Since the senior leader of Awami League is also here, this all eyes of Gaza, this culture, it was nurtured and promoted even by Sheikh Hasina. They were shouting for Gaza. They were embracing jihadists like Hifazat-e-Islam, and now the jihadis are on the street destroying Bangladesh and becoming the monsters which are also trying to eliminate Awami League. What is happening in Bangladesh is the result of the decades of patronizing political Islam, appeasing political Islam, and, as you said, harboring the Gaza madness. And in today's Bangladesh, what is happening, when I'm talking to you, just 2 hours before, they set fire to Udichi Shilpi Goshti's office also. Last night, they burnt down Chayanot. 2 hours ago, they have burned down Udichi Shilpi Goshti. Yunus is playing the role of the arsonist and firefighter. Because this is a direct attack. What you have mentioned about Tipu Chandra Das, the 13-year-old Hindu youth, nowhere is mentioned about his this very brutal incident. No one is talking. Why? Because he is a Hindu, and they are Muslim press. I must tell the truth. And let a Hindu die, or let 1 million Hindus die, no problem. But one Muslim man died.
It's a dull holiday season in America. Grocery prices are rising, political divisions are sharpening, but do not worry, your president has got the perfect antidote. Donald Trump has announced a new athletic competition for New Year. 2026 is America's 250th independence anniversary, so Trump is organizing the Patriot Games. Each state will send one male and female athlete. They will take part in different sporting disciplines. Immediately, social media asks the same question. Did Trump just announce a real-life Hunger Games?
Good evening, you're watching Brass Tacks with me, Zaka Jacob. There is a bloodbath out on the streets of Bangladesh, and the target seems to be India and former Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina. It started with the killing of Islamist student leader Osman Hadi. He was declared dead last evening, and thereafter there has been a spiral of violence